You're listening to the Best Company Show, Southern California's business podcast, focusing on topics of interest to CEOs and managers of middle market companies, with your host, Robert J. Curtis.
Welcome to this edition of the Best Companies radio show and podcast. I'm your host, Robert J. Curtis, and I have with me Kevin Rhue from WiLogic.
How are you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Bright and cheery today. Kevin is this is episode number 2, by the way, and I am very glad to have with me Kevin, who is from WiLogic, a telecommunications company that is Orange County based. I think.
Yep.
Is it Fountain Valley or Huntington Beach?
Huntington Beach. 17 years.
17 years. Can you let's dig right in? Tell me a little bit about your company.
Well, we are a telecommunications provider, like you said. We started way back when, 17 years ago, doing fixed point wireless only. So we would do internet to people that couldn't get internet from other people. And then we have evolved from there to start doing voice products. So we started providing telephone lines and internet together in a package. And then after that, we ended up buying our own commercial switching platform and kind of stepping up and actually building our own infrastructure. So now we can offer anything from fiber services to copper services to the fixed point services all throughout Orange County and LA and San Diego and all through that. We can even actually do nationwide as well, but our core focus is here in SoCal.
And you truly are a local phone company, as if I didn't even know they existed, to be perfectly honest, until we met and we were talking. I mean, that's phenomenal. I think of them as being big organizations, multinationals and all of that, but apparently there's you and maybe some other people that are thriving in this industry. Yeah,
it's a little bit of a niche, but it just comes down to customer support. You care about your customer, and they know that. And that makes the difference. I mean, if you call some of the big boys, then they're our best salespeople if you call the big boys.
Because then you realize you're not getting the service you want,
after about
right?
2 hours on hold, they say, maybe we should call WiLogic.
Tell me a little bit more about your customers. I mean, who is your typical customer or your customer range?
Well, our customer range is, like most business owners, we can take anybody. So we'll take the mom and pop, 1-2 phones, just internet, that sort of thing. But the real sweet spot for our business is right around, I would say, 15, 20 phones, maybe 10, 20, 30 employees. Right in there is the best bread and butter for us, just because they don't have a full technical staff. They need someone to do it for them, do it right, actually explain the technology, and really kind of bring them into it, rather than just, here's a box, enjoy. Okay,
and then up to what level? I mean, is there a certain level where you kind of top out and say, well, we don't have the capacity for that, or can you handle expanding capacity?
Well, we are always expanding, but I'd say you have to know your limitations as a business owner, and we probably top out right around 150, maybe 200 phones at a single location would be right about where we'd top out. After that, we'd probably refer.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so tell me about what distinguishes you from the competition. There are obviously other people that are doing similar businesses to you, similar business models, but there's something that some way you've survived for 17 years. So what is it? What's the trick?
Well, there's a lot of people that are resell off of other people's switching platforms. They'll rent time on it, they'll rent space on it. We actually stepped up and bought our own. So when you're talking to us, you're talking to the people that twist the wires together, the people that can actually do something. So that's been really a core focus of our business, is to make sure that if there's a problem, we can solve it. It's not, okay, if there's a problem, we'll put you on hold and call somebody else to solve it. So we want to make sure we just have that personal experience. We answer our own phones. When you call WiLogic, a real live person answers the phone and asks you a question. So if you have a problem, then you're going to talk to somebody that's going to be able to get you someone to solve it.
As a matter of fact, I mentioned it this morning when I called to reach you, actually. The first person I spoke to was actually essentially a trained technician. They literally answer the phone. You don't have a receptionist, you don't have a call queue, or you don't force people into chat sessions or anything. You go, literally the guys picking up the phone are people who know what's going on and know how to handle things.
Absolutely. That is key, because that person has to be able to ascertain is there an issue, is this a sales call, trouble, that sort of thing, and get it to the right person. And so it's not just someone to say hello, it's someone to actually extract some information and be able to make sure that customer gets to the right person. So
okay.
A little bit more than just a receptionist.
Very interesting. So, okay, so if we dissect your business model, and you kind of went through very quickly what you do, can we go a little bit slower through? Because a lot of people watching this show and listening are not maybe familiar with telecom. They're familiar with it maybe on a from a consumer's perspective. But you say you have your fixed wire, and you actually do the wiring. You actually come in and do, the connections. And you also have a central office, I guess, that switches the calls and does all of that too? Okay, and that's what's in Huntington Beach?
No, actually our that facility's in Anaheim.
Oh, okay. Okay, that facility's in Anaheim. And then you're running your sales, management, and operations, everything out of Huntington. Okay.
Huntington is the technical and the accounting, and then sales is run out of Santa Ana. We have an office in Santa Ana. Oh,
okay. So you are a little bit spread out. I mean, it's not that far, but you're obviously, as the owner and founder of the company, you're obviously responsible and commuting between all these places all the time and taking care of things. Does that present issues for you?
Well, whenever you have a location that you're not at, you need to make sure you have the right person there, so you don't have to babysit them and watch them and that sort of thing. If you're concerned about that, then you probably got the wrong person working for you.
Right. Okay, and then the specific products and services that you deliver. Let's break them down one by one. Maybe categorize them. Can you give me 2 or 3 categories of how they fit, and maybe go into a little bit more detail about them?
All right, we're a solutions provider when it comes to telecommunications and internet. I mean, we're interconnected with all the other carriers, so not only can we provide our own internet, we're on fixed point, like I said, we're on multiple high-rises all throughout Orange and LA County. We've got hundreds of antennas, thousands of antennas out there between our customers and our broadcast points. So if you're in an area that is having trouble, let's say it doesn't have fiber, it doesn't have some of the faster cable services, we can actually put an antenna on the roof and beam directly to the building and actually give you those high bandwidth speeds, so you're not stuck at like a DSL speed or even worse dial-up, which I don't think you can probably even use nowadays.
Okay.
But so that was our core right from the beginning. But as we grew, we knew that in order to survive and expand and thrive, we had to make sure that we could deliver over any medium. So then that's when we got cross-connected and involved with the ability to come to if there's fiber to the building, then we can come across it. We can bring our internet across that fiber. We can bring our phone lines across that fiber. Same with any kind of cable. Okay. So wherever they're at, we find the best solution.
Okay, wonderful. So, so you started out. I gather it was you wearing a bunch of hats, right?
Yes. One or two, yes.
Okay, and over time you've grown, and can I let the viewers know you have just shy of 20 employees now, I think, right
yes.
now, and you're growing. You've taken your time. You've gone through some, ups and downs, and the industry. We went through obviously the Great Recession several years back and things like that, and you survived.
Yes, we did.
Let's talk about that. Can you tell me? Let's talk about maybe the business challenges you've had. Give me maybe a couple of examples of the biggest business challenges you can think of that you've encountered.
One of the biggest challenges that we encountered, that everybody that I know in business has encountered, is when you start with just the core group. And our core group was 4. There was 4 owners, bunch of hats on the desks, answering the phones. I was up on towers, roofs, and I was in the office, and I was taking technical support calls. We were all doing that. So as we grew the company, you're working in the company so much. Eventually, you have to be able to pull back so you can start expanding the company, making more important decisions. So we had to really start evolving out of the everyday twist the wires together to get to more of the management. That was the biggest challenge of all, and it's an everyday challenge still to today.
So, but I mean, at some point you were hiring people. I think you described it earlier when we were talking. You described actually you just kind of grab whoever you have,
yes.
Who's ever willing to come on board and find out what their capabilities are and try to train them and fit them in the in a particular responsibility or job or position or whatever, right? That's how you started?
Absolutely. It's the mirror fog test. It's just like, is there a job opening? Yeah, you fogged the mirror, you're hired. By the way, we're going to shove you in this chair. We're going to hand you these things. Go. Yeah. And not really taking it. It's more about can we get him? Can we get him cheap? Is he available? And can he fog a mirror? But that I want to say it worked, but it didn't. It gave us bodies to pile up in the company in the beginning in order to get some work done. But after a while, you start really realizing that you do need to get the quality people, the people that you don't have to babysit, the people that you don't, if they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. What's their skill sets? What kind of responsibility can you give them? So in the beginning, we were just throwing people at whatever, and I found that at that point, now we had our jobs, and we were going around and going behind these people that we hired to fix their mistakes.
Okay.
So it's like, great, now I have another job.
Now, when you're talking about hiring people and bringing people on board, you're obviously, if you're doing wireless connections and fiber and all of this, and it's very technology heavy. I mean, it's most of the people you're bringing on board are technical. They're either trained at basically a technical level or a higher level, a pretty high level, right? Is there a particular issue or situation that you ran into? I could imagine when you first started, you just hired somebody to answer the phones, somebody to send out the bills and invoices and that kind of stuff. And at some point you might you kind of realize that, wait a second, we're putting these people in situations where it's not appropriate for them. We're asking them to do too much that's not technical. I've been there. I've been in that situation, by having been interim CEO at a technology company, and also another startup that I did, where you are kind of scrambling to put people, and then you end up putting people that, hey, you're a great employee, you work really well here. Let's try you out on this, and it is just not their forte, not something they're interested, or whatever it might be. Did you run into that too?
Oh yeah, and again, in the beginning, doing that sort of thing with that thought process of just, if they're alive, they can do the job. We several years ago we started implementing new structures, and that's where we were looking at the business saying, this isn't working. We can't just hire anybody. We're having to go behind them too much. So we were looking at a lot of different options. The book Traction, we read that. Excellent book, good information in there. We started rebuilding the structure from within. So we started defining the roles, and that was kind of that real aha moment. Something that as a business owner you already know, but until you start doing it, you don't realize just how sloppy things are running. And we started defining each position, going, oh man, you've got the dishwasher and cooking, and you got the cook washing the dishes, kind of thing. So not only did we put all that structure in place and define all the roles and their importance and are they in the critical path, then we started to saying, okay, well, how can they be successful, or how can they fail? So then we said, okay, putting in the metrics of success. So now we can look at it and say, okay, here's like a scorecard, and you'd look at it and say, here's your percentages. So I mean, if we're having to roll to a facility 3 and 4 times to get the job done, there's a red flag that pops up in our system. It's all in our database. It's all programmed in there now. So it says, okay, we have an issue here. We're having to go too many times. It should only take 1 roll, but we went out 3 times. We're at 4%. It should be 2%. And all these metrics over these last few years we've been putting in there. And we bring up in our meetings, we have weekly meetings with the owners to go over all this stuff. So now we can see the problems. It's just gigantic flashlights on every division. And that has just changed our lives when we did that, to figure out just here, that's what we should be doing.
Let's talk about when you started this. I mean, you had been in business for quite some time before you actually started implementing. Was it something that just came up in the last couple of years, or has it been 5 years or 10 years of this?
It's actually just the last few years.
Really?
Because we've survived the recession. We've done all that. Recurring revenue is our model. So it's been a great model. It's been a good business, but it just got to the point where we were running around too much, and we were asking ourselves why. Okay. And that's when we just sat down and said, we need to change this, because we want to back off. The owners want to back off a little bit, get some good management in place, so we're not working 80 hours a week anymore. And in order to do that, it comes down to the right person in the right seat, doing a good job and being responsible.
Okay, and then so you must have decided at some point on a selection method or some way to decide who is in the right seat. I mean, is there a methodology employed, or was it just kind of looking at the employees, subjectively looking at employees' capabilities or interests, or that kind of thing? How did that flow?
Do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity to do it?
Okay.
It kind of comes down to that, and the biggest thing is to define the role.
Okay.
And that is, I find there's a lot of small business owners, they do not do that. They rattle off what your job is. It's like, okay, this is what you'll be doing. They'll give you a whole list of things, but they don't actually have a definition of the role that this person's going to be doing. And without that, they can't succeed, and you can't manage them and succeed in managing them because you have no matrix.
So the first part, we'll go into this a little bit after commercial break here real quick, but just to wrap this up, you started implementing this process, and one of the first things you looked at was right person in the right place, or were there other phases and of implementation that you did, or you just went right to the people?
We started by drawing out a perfect company. So we actually created the accountability charts. We defined all the roles of if money was an object, if we just could do whatever we want, this is exactly how we would divide everything out and what these seats would be responsible for. And then from there, we started backing into it saying, okay, who do we have and do they fit? You know, it's not trying to squeeze them into the seat. Is that the right seat for them?
Right. Okay. Well, good. Let's go into this a little bit more. We'll take a brief commercial break for a message about me and my sponsor, Alpha Quantex, my company, and and also my future speaking engagements and things like that. And then we'll come back and we can talk about how you solve these problems and what you're doing today, and venture on, and we'll dig into the hot seat question too. We have a hot seat. I'm going to throw one at you. Okay.
Right, okay, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Robert J. Curtis is the founder and CEO of Alpha Quantex, a premier provider of employee analytics and metrics that helps CEOs and managers of middle market companies hire the best, manage the best, and be the best. Robert is a keynote speaker, presenter, moderator, and panel member who regularly appears at conferences, business events, and association meetings nationwide. His presentations provide powerful information that give CEOs and managers of middle market companies valuable insights to improve their hiring and engagement skills. If you'd like Robert to make a personal appearance, he can be contacted by visiting his show's website, bestcompanyshow.com, or by emailing Robert at info@bestcompanyshow.com.
And welcome back to this edition of the Best Company Show and Podcast. I'm your host, Robert J. Curtis. You can listen to this show and our future shows on iTunes, Stitcher, and many of our guests' websites. Hopefully you'll be able to hook it up to yours. By the way, your firm you have a great website, by the way. I went over there and visited and took a look, and it's really nicely done.
I'll let them know.
I'm sure you're doing it in-house. I don't know, or whoever's working on it for you. They did a great job. But anyway, again, to repeat, today my guest is Kevin Rhue, with founder and CEO at this point of WiLogic, a company of 17 years here located in Orange County, but essentially the corporate headquarters, I guess, would be Huntington Beach.
Huntington Beach, yeah.
And 17 years and going on 20 employees, and we're talking about the various issues that you've confronted and how your challenges and how you've overcome them. So anyway, before we go there, can you give me just our viewers and listeners some information on how they would reach WiLogic and reach you on if they're interested in your services or interested in learning more?
Absolutely. They can certainly go to our website at www.wilogic.com. That's WILOGIC.com. Or they can call us 714-230-8487. I'd love to hear from them.
Okay, great. Okay, so before we took a break, you were talking about the challenges of putting the right people in the right place, and you went through and did essentially an org chart, maybe a little more sophisticated than that, and really defined the positions that you wanted to fill and that you needed to function properly as an organization. So you went through, you made some hard choices, I imagine, right?
Yes, there were some very hard choices, and we've had to move some people around in the company that were not very happy to be moved. And that puts me in a position where, you get the compassion card. You know, you're the CEO and you work with these people, and some of these people have been there, 10 years and working for this company. So you have to look at them and say, you know what, we're moving you to here, and we're redefining you. And they kind of look at you as like, what are you doing? But you have to. You can't be their friend. You have to be the boss. You have to own the company, and you've got to set them up to succeed. And if they're in the wrong seat, you got to move them. You have to. If you don't, then the only thing you're doing is setting yourself up to fail and setting them up to fail.
Now, tell me, reflecting back, obviously you can't tell what the alternatives would have been. You only know the road you took, right? But taking the road that you did and making the changes that you did, how would you say it worked out? Was it initially a challenge, or was it tough to swallow for a lot of people, or was it something that was fairly easily adapted to? Give me the rundown.
I wouldn't say fairly easily adapted to.
Okay.
It was a bit challenging because it's a completely different paradigm from what it was. More of that easy flow, friendly family kind of environment. It was too easy. It was too loosey-goosey. And when we started implementing real structure and putting teeth to it, saying, no, this is what we do, this is what we believe as a company, and this is what we are going to maintain, then it got a little uncomfortable for some people. But that's just what we had to do.
Now, one thing we talk about here on the show, and that I deal with in the course of my work, is culture. And it sounds like, to a certain extent, you essentially graduated to a new level of culture.
Oh yeah.
But the question is, were you able to maintain some of the old and bring in new, or did you totally transform? What would you say?
I'd say there's definitely a little bit of the old, because we've worked together so long and the staff has been there. And it came down to just a few key hard decisions that we had to make, and hard moves we had to make, without getting too much into detail.
Right.
And once we did those, then all of a sudden it was just light air in the room. It made all the difference in the world when we made those two very difficult moves that we had to make.
Okay.
And that really set the stage for the rest of it. And now everyone has really adopted it, and it's just, we're thriving at this point with that culture, which is fantastic, because you see the cultures of, Apple or these kinds of places where they just have this wonderful kind of environment, and people want to be there and work there. And I've always wanted that since the first day WiLogic started. I wanted to have that fun kind of, oh, you want to work here. And I think we are headed in that direction where we're going to get there.
So did you have to put like ping pong tables in the break room and things like that? Or?
We did have to put a pool table in one of the warehouses.
Oh, there you go.
It was rough, but we're getting through it.
All right, cool. 'Cause I've heard rumors that some companies around here in Orange County have quite the facilities. They're more like an entertainment complex than they are a work environment, from what I can tell.
Oh yeah, I've visited one or two of those. Pretty jealous of their some of those entertainment rooms, I must say.
Anyway, but okay. Now getting back to things, what you did was at the same time that you put people in right positions, you also talked about and mentioned that you started imposing or implementing, let's put it that way, metrics and expectations, right? And yes. Goals and things like that for your people. And was that something that flowed instantly at the same time, or did you gradually work on that? I'm assuming you gradually implemented it and you refined it and you've been working on it over time. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we started a weekly meeting specifically working on those things. I mean, we meet all the time, as you can imagine, but it was we now have a meeting specifically targeted at those kinds of things. So we're looking at all of our matrix, all of our flags, our percentages, and things like that. And the details tell you everything. Numbers don't lie, which is just fantastic. When we started implementing those, we're just like, oh, okay. It felt like there was an issue there. There it is. There's the number. We're off track here. We need to fix that.
And so one thing you do in that course of things, I'm putting words in your mouth, correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing you're going to do is start advising your managers and your employees of these numbers so that they can work on them, so they realize that that's important to you and to the company, right?
Absolutely. Every metrics has a trigger point. So if it hits a certain point, that triggers a meeting, and then that meeting to go over, it's just like, all right, we're off track here. Why? We dig into the numbers. We dig into the details to find out, what's going wrong here. Is it a people problem? Is it a process problem? Is it a product problem? I mean, what happened here, and how do we fix it?
Okay, great. So going forward, where do you see yourself taking this? Are you growing rapidly? You're growing at a moderate pace? Or are you growing in a new or different direction? What's the future?
We're growing at a nice, controlled, moderate pace, which is part of all this as well. We actually have our goals and what we want to grow, and we've been meeting those.
Okay.
Which has been very, very exciting because we're tracking them so closely now. We can actually make plans differently than we made them before.
Okay.
So it's been a wonderful thing.
Wonderful. Okay, great. You ready for a hot seat question?
Hit me.
Okay. Okay. Something in the news lately. Jeff Bezos and Amazon.
I've heard of him.
Apparently the stock market's done well by him.
Yeah.
But one thing that I noticed in the news was in the last week or so was an article that was circulating talking about how he focuses people's attention. Well, first off, how he pays attention to his customers. Apparently he does read a lot of, whether it is blog posts or emails or other sources of information, critiques about the company and their service and various other things. And he's very in tune with that, surprisingly, for being a man of his wealth and stature at this point.
Yeah.
But one of the things that the particular article I've read said was that if he wants attention on a particular issue or something addressed, he has a habit of essentially forwarding an email or sending an email with nothing but a question mark. That's it.
Just
the whole
question mark.
One question mark. and
not two, just one.
Not just one. And so that I'm assuming he's forwarding an email, or there is some explanation of why there's a question mark. I don't know if I'd want to get an email with just a question mark from Mr. Bezos, but if I was one of his employees. But if it had something, obviously there's some background or foundation there, and then he expects or it is a company practice or the understanding that that gets immediate attention, top priority. Everything else is dropped until that issue, the question mark issue, is resolved by that person. And I found that astounding because that, number one, you can understand why he does that, right? He does that for a lot of reasons because he's a very busy man, doesn't have a lot of time, but he wants a way to communicate that something's very urgent. And it's a nice, very simple, very straightforward way of doing it.
But shorthand personified there.
But I'm wondering how that would, well, first off, do you have anything similar to that at your company? You know, what other companies do? I know what I've done in the past, and it wasn't like that. It was much more in-depth explanation. It was much more direct to the person. Of course, my company was much smaller and a different culture and different things going on. But what about you? What does your company do? What do you do?
Well, if it comes to my attention, then obviously something went wrong somewhere. I mean, I'm assuming this is like an instance of trouble. There's someone that's not satisfied with something. So if it comes to my desk or my email and it says, look, here it is, I have a problem, then I feel that it needs to be dealt with. So I love the idea of just the question mark, because you've got this $1 billion guy, just question mark, send, and then you got the guy on the other end just looking at it going, oh my God.
Well, hopefully he's actually on the other end saying, great, another challenge, another opportunity.
I'm sure he's saying those very words. But in our company, something like that, a little more letters than just the question mark. I guess that just comes with the dollars and cents of it all. The more dollars, the less letters. But I'll send out an email. So if someone something like that hits my desk, I'll send it out to the appropriate person saying, you know, what is this? Why is it here? Fix it. You know, maybe some more words, but for the most part, that's about it. It doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, it's important. Something didn't happen. Someone's not happy. We didn't take care of them.
Okay, and so you're actually explaining it, and you're not just kind of throwing it into their lap and let them figure it out, right? I mean, to me, from a guidance perspective, from a manager's perspective, I think that might be a better way to deal with it. Granted that you don't have the constraints that somebody like Jeff Bezos has, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, how do you think it would be taken if you decided to start doing that?
Just the question mark. That'd be a fun thing to try, I think. But it requires a little bit more of an explanation. But I don't want to get too much into it because part of the department heads are supposed to be running their departments. So if this hits my desk, I want them to deal with it. I want them to fix the situation. I want them to report back to me saying, hey, this is what happened. This was a miscommunication, whatever. It's fixed now. Because otherwise, if I'm jumping too far into it, then I'm doing their job, and that means I don't have the right person there.
Right.
So, you know, I need to be able to, I get it. If he sends that question mark off, it's not him going in to figure out, it's him saying, look, this got dropped. Deal with it. He hands it to a qualified person, and they take care of it.
You know, that's an interesting, a great observation, because, and I'm just kind of realizing it as you're talking that, but yeah, the being able to give someone an email or a message with just a question mark is the ultimate sign of trust.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have any explanation, you don't have to give guidance. You know or expect that they will be able to handle it, and you trust that they will be able to handle it. Right?
Yeah. You have to have good people in order to do that. But, you know, he's fairly successful from what I hear. So, you know, I think he's probably got some
right
good
combination.
people. I think so.
Right combination. One thing that I don't recall reading in the particular article I read about this whole episode with the question marks was the accountability on the back end. You've mentioned that. You want them to report back to you, and you want them to show that they've, you know, taken care of the issue, or to figure out who will need to take care of it or pass it on, delegate, or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't any mention of that as far as I recall in the article I read. And so I wondered when I was reading it, what happens to it after the question mark? And are there metrics to back it up? Or are these unique one-time things? And I think you address it with the way you approach it, which is the expectation of the report back and the understanding. You probably, I don't know.
We do have that. Yeah, I mean that's the expectation is they have to report back, so we know that the situation is solved.
And you're giving them essentially probably a timeline or some kind of expectation. We need to take care of this quickly, or we need it done this week, or whatever, depending on the circumstances. Right.
Yeah, there's a clock that's attached to it based on how hot the situation is.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And so, so what do you think? Would you be willing to try the question mark and report back to us and see how it works, or do you want to stick with what you're doing?
I don't know. I may have to stick with what we're doing for now. I don't know if the question mark. But it might be fun to try.
You know what would be fun is
if I got 2 question marks back, I think it'd be the response.
Either 2 question marks back, or somebody says, "What do you think, you're Jeff Bezos?"
Right. Just don't send me the exclamation point, and then everything's fine.
Yeah. No, actually, I think it's an interesting management style, if you can call it that. It's probably more of an attention getter. The one thing that I guess maybe a last thought on this would be, what about the consequences to that employee or that person's ordinary workflow and what they already had scheduled for that day or that week or whatever. Now what happens when you give them, or when someone sends them a question mark and says this is top priority, nothing else can be done. You might have meetings, you might have travel plans, going to business conferences, you might have important engagements with new customers or whatever it might be. And if you're saying this is more important than everything else in your schedule, okay, it reflects on the value of it, but at the same time, it's a disruption for the employee or the manager. It is. What do you think? Have any thoughts on that?
It's you're right. It is a disruption, and when you disrupt someone's normal workflow, it kind of pulls them out, and for them to re-engage in that workflow, it takes a little bit of time. So, I take care when I do that. Okay. It's not nothing when I do that. So when they see it, it's important. They know it. They deal with it. They have the ability to delegate some other responsibilities to make sure that gets done properly. But I think it just comes down to don't cry wolf.
Okay. Okay, so let's get back to this because you mentioned disruption to their routine and giving high quality customer service. Give me a little bit more on that. You mentioned some numbers, 4%, 3%, 2%. What were you referencing at that point?
Everything has a metrics on it throughout the company. So we've got field teams, we've got field vehicles that go out there. So when we go on site, they should be able to do an entire installation in one roll. Then we have the VoIP team that takes the actual telephones out. They set them up. They train everybody there how to use them and get them all set up, and then they come back. So all those things should be one and done if communication was done properly, if the sales effort was done correctly to make sure all the information was. So one matrix is what we call re-rolls. So if we got to go back out there, there was either a situation where the customer didn't communicate something to us, I mean, it happens, or we just did something wrong, or it's a combination of both. So we have the matrix in place for that, and we go over them weekly saying, all right, did we have any re-rolls this week? Oh, yeah, we did. What happened? All right, well, we had X amount of %, and that means there's an issue here. It looks like the field team, they weren't communicating with the technical team, or something to that effect. So those kinds of numbers are critical to show you the health of your company. We have all kinds of matrix through accounting as well, as far as billing. Is billing being done on time? Is it being correctly? Is are the bills getting out in a timely manner? All these kinds of things have numbers on them to make sure that if the customer knows they're going to get billed. So you don't want to bill them 2 weeks after they think they're going to get the bill or anything like that. You have to be consistent, and they have to understand and know and feel comfortable with you. So that just shines a light on all of it.
Right, and so you're tracking literally everything, sounds like. And including customer calls in, resolutions of issues, how many times you mentioned re-rolls. I'm trying to think, what else? You mentioned the financial,
trouble tickets. When they call in, open up a trouble ticket, change orders, we track all of that. How long does it take to close a trouble ticket? What's the percentage of trouble tickets open? Because you're always going to have some kind of trouble. We've got thousands of clients, so we're always going to have a couple trouble tickets open, but it should stay below a certain percentage based on the population that we have and that we're servicing, right? So if it goes above that, then there's an issue. Maybe there's an issue on the network, maybe there's an issue in communication with the client. Change order is the same thing. If they make a change on the account, it's pretty easy. There's kind of a line that they follow, and if it starts jumping up, then there's a problem, and we need to take a look at it. But that's the meetings. That's the Tuesday morning meetings when we go over all those numbers. And as soon as one of those things jump up, we say, okay, we got to look at this. Okay,
so let's backtrack, and we'll take it back to Amazon and Jeff Bezos again, and kind of explore that and relate it to it. If you basically what you're doing right now, you're very comfortable with, and you don't necessarily want to send out question mark emails. Right?
Right. No, I want to send out question mark emails. I just probably shouldn't.
Okay. And there's good reasons for that. There's good reasons why you shouldn't. And because maybe it is because your business as a high touch, high customer care, that it's a lot more maybe personal in a sense than an internet retailer like Amazon or something like that. Although Amazon has its fingers in a lot of different things.
Oh yeah.
And some of them may be high touch. My experience and knowledge of the company, I don't know that much, and I don't see it as a high touch business. But yours is definitely, and your customers probably expect a higher standard of care, a much more personal interaction, and so you need to transfer that and have that going through to your employees on a management level too, right?
Absolutely.
And then the accountability and the response times and all of that is something that improves your functionality, improves your response, giving the customer care, and helping those right people in the right places deliver what's expected, right?
Absolutely.
So, plans for the future?
Plans for the future. Well, we're expanding, as I said, and what I really want to do is I want to start opening up more satellite offices, more satellite sales offices, starting here in California and then moving out into some of the other states. We've got our eyes on a couple places, but we're just taking it step by step and making sure we take what we've accomplished over these last 17 years with the core and the structure and just continue to replicate, so that way we can get the right people in the right place.
Okay, so we'll look for you all around Southern California, Northern California, and maybe other states that are applicable, right?
Absolutely.
In the future. Good. And service offerings, same service offerings for the most part?
Same service offerings. We're always looking for other things that we can offer the customer, so we always have our ear to the ground. But, I mean, that's our core, and we're sticking with that and adding as we go.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank you for being a guest here
Thank you for
on the
having
show.
me.
It's a wonderful show, and it was a wonderful show to have you on. Thank you for taking your time. One more time, if people want to reach you or the company in general, I mean, there's I guess a sales number or a person to talk to.
Sure. Ylogic, www.ylogic.com. That's WILOGIC.com. And call the main line. You'll get a live body, 714-230-8487.
Wonderful. I also want to thank our engineer, Paul Roberts, along with our producer, Roland Canamar, without whom we couldn't have a show. He's been very helpful at getting everything together. And you know Roland personally.
I do. I've known him. I've known him a long time, since I was a kid.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he is.
But anyway, if you'd like to connect with me through social media, and I'd love to connect with you, let's start with LinkedIn. And you can find me there as Robert J. Curtis. Don't forget the middle initial. There's a lot of Robert Curtises out there, and the J makes me stand out a little bit. But once we get connected on LinkedIn, we can move to other forums, and I'd be glad to connect with you and help in any way I can, and follow through from there. And until our next show, I hope your hiring and management decisions will lead you to be one of the best companies in the world. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to The Best Company Show, Southern California's business podcast, focusing on topics of interest to CEOs and managers of middle market companies, with your host, Robert J. Curtis.